so much for joining us here. I'm Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. Here, we can sit down. We are thrilled to be here in South Bend after a big Notre Dame win over the weekend. My name is Anna Palmer. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Punchbowl News. Thank you so much for joining us in the room as well as those of you on the live stream. We are here today as part of our Investing in America series, a partnership with the American Investment Council. And this morning, we're talking to Representative Rudy Yakym. You all know him well here. We're going to be talking news of the day, as well as talking about Indiana's 2nd District, the manufacturing revitalization that has happened, as well as retirement security and private investment. Afterwards, I'm going to be joined by American Investment Council President and CEO, Will Dunham, for a fireside chat. As always, you can find Punchbowl News at punchbowl.news. We have a free morning newsletter. We encourage you to sign up for that if you're interested in what's happening in Washington. And of course, you can find us on all social media at Punchbowl News. Mr. Yakym, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Welcome to Indiana's 2nd District. It's great to have you here.
This is my first time, so I'm thrilled. I walked around a little bit at campus and downtown. We're going to start with some news of the day questions, as we always do. We are on day 20 of the government shutdown. Both sides are dug in. The Speaker of the House has kept lawmakers like yourself back in their districts for the most part. Do you worry that your constituents here might be wondering why you aren't in Washington trying to solve the problems and get the government reopened?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me this morning. And again, welcome to Indiana's 2nd District, the manufacturing capital of America. As we've been here in our districts through the shutdown, I've actually had the opportunity to go and meet with a number of constituents. And the constituents that I serve here in Indiana are very well aware of the fact that House Republicans, including myself, voted to keep the government open. We did our job. We passed our continuing resolution. And the folks that I run into, whether it's at the grocery store or at a kid's sporting event, they're all just simply saying to me, hey, thanks for doing your job. And it's now time for Senate Democrats to do their job and vote to reopen the government. Because, at the end of the day, our military, our veterans, our Border Patrol, people like that should not be held hostage in exchange for something that's unrelated to government funding.
We interviewed House Majority Leader Steve Scalise last week on our show Flyout Day, and he said the Obamacare subsidies should expire. This is what Democrats have been kind of saying. They're kind of waiting to open up the government to try to find some negotiation from their perspective. It's a big ask by Democrats, certainly. Are you worried about the impact on your constituents when those notices on October or November 1st go up that the rates are going to increase?
Well, first of all, Democrats need to open the government. That can all be negotiated after the federal government is open, but we're not going to sit here and negotiate that while we are going through a shutdown. That's just not how this works, and that's not what we as House Republicans believe we should be doing, is holding people hostage in exchange for, again, a negotiation with nothing to do with federal funding. Now, at the same time, we're listening to our constituents. The cost of health care is a huge issue here in this district and across the country. We've got to do things to continue to bring down the cost of health care, but we shouldn't be having this negotiation while the federal government's being held hostage.
Are you open to looking at potentially an extension of the Obamacare subsidies?
Well, I think we have to have a negotiation over this, but we also have to remember that these were things that were put in place temporarily during the early days of the pandemic as a bridge to get us through the pandemic. These were set to expire at the end of this year. Democrats were the ones who set this up to expire at the end of this year. And there's a reason that this was not put in place permanently. This was put in place temporarily as a bridge to get us through the pandemic. And that time has certainly now come and gone.
All right, let's shift to the topic of the day, investing in America. The Hoosier State has a long history of manufacturing. As you noted at the opening, there's a lot of entrepreneurs here in the 2nd District. Talk about what you're seeing play out at the local level, with local businesses grow, they create jobs, and the role that private investment has played.
Well, the entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well here in Indiana's 2nd District. And this is the RV capital of the world, where we make 85% of the nation's RVs. This is the orthopedic capital of the world. 60% of the nation's hips and knees and joints are made here in this district. It's quickly becoming the boat capital of North America, manufactured housing. And we have so many entrepreneurs who start these companies, they grow these companies. We have an incredible workforce here in Indiana's 2nd District. I've had the chance to go on many of the factory floors and meet with the people who are just trying to show up every day and do their job and go to work, and frankly have the federal government just kind of leave them alone. But oftentimes we see these companies, as they're growing, they need more capital than maybe what they can provide internally. And we're very fortunate that the outside world has looked at this state, at North Central Indiana, and said this is a place that is worthy of investment. And we're incredibly proud to be associated with many of the companies that have attracted outside capital. I think of a company on the southwest side of South Bend called Pure Green Farms. They're a high-tech aquaponics facility where you can buy lettuce that is locally grown and harvested sometimes yesterday as opposed to a week ago out in California. You know, I think of a company called Surf Internet, was started actually by a friend of mine over in Elkhart County. They're taking fiber to rural parts of Indiana. But to do that, it's very, very expensive to run fiber and broadband into the farm country around here. But private capital has come in and helped them with that expansion. I think of a company called Gillette Generators over in Elkhart County. This is a company that makes large generators for big facilities across this country. They needed help growing, and so private capital came in, gave them a significant infusion, and the real story here is that they invest and reinvest. They grow their companies. They hire more workers here, which again helps keep the entrepreneurial spirit alive and well, but it also provides good paying jobs for the constituents that I'm fortunate to serve.
Talk about that a little bit. I mean, I think one of the interesting things we're talking about backstage, kind of this ecosystem, right, of entrepreneurs coming, building a business, maybe want to grow, want to innovate, need extra capital, sell their business potentially, and then they kind of go and do it again. I mean, how do you foster that kind of an environment and also make sure, are you guys welcoming in private capital, that they kind of know that the second district is open for business?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a number of things here in North Central Indiana. First of all, you got the macroeconomic environment in part created by the tax code that we have that is very much pro-investment. Then you've got a state environment here in Indiana. We're fortunate to have great state leadership that is down in Indianapolis between our state legislature and a long string of governors who have said that Indiana is open for business. We do not have a heavy regulatory environment here in the state of Indiana, which I think is certainly to our benefits. And then, locally here, we've got just such an incredible entrepreneurial spirit of people that want to start companies. They want to grow companies. They want to invest in their companies. You take that and you combine all of that with an incredible workforce. The people of Indiana's second district, they love to just simply get up, go to work, and they work hard every day to make the products that we make here that ultimately get shipped all over the country and all over the globe. And so it's really that local talent, the entrepreneurial spirit, the state talent combined with the tax environment that I think really makes Indiana's second district a leader in American manufacturing and attraction of private capital.
You talked about that. I mean, it's so interesting because it's such a variety. It's not like, it's just one industry that you see kind of one entrepreneurship happening, local business growth and private investment, certainly medical devices, as you mentioned, but you also have a foothold in the defense sector. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen there?
Sure. Of course, we've seen a number of companies in and around Indiana's second district that have, they continue to innovate in the defense space. And a lot of this is stuff that people have never heard of before. I think of companies that make things that actually sometimes are often even top secret that go on I was at a company here recently in Elkhart. They make a product that goes on our naval warships. We've got a company down in Marshall County. They make some of the largest gears in the world at TAMCO. Some of the largest gears in the world that end up going on many products in our defense space. So many hidden companies around here that no one's ever heard of. One of the things that I said the night I was sworn in Washington, D.C. 3 years ago is I said that Indiana's second district, it's the back end of the country. It's the part of the country that makes the rest of the world operate. It's the part that nobody sees. And so we have a very strong defense base here, but it's so many things and it's companies that nobody in the rest of the country have never heard of. But I tell you what, if that gear on that ship stops working, you will have heard of this company. And we're very fortunate to have people that are just committed to precision manufacturing here so we can make these products and our warfighters can rely on them.
So you talked about kind of the people of the district, the state environment that you're seeing and kind of in taxes and other things that make it advantageous to do business here in the state. What role can and should Congress play? You're 3 years into being there. Is Congress doing enough in this area? Well,
first of all, I think Democrats should reopen the government. I think that would be a good first step. But secondly, I would point to the working families tax cut that we recently passed. One of the philosophies that we had, and I serve on the House Ways and Means Committee with jurisdiction over tax. We were very fortunate that Chairman Jason Smith and our Speaker took what I would call a bottom-up approach to the development of the working families tax cut. But there's a couple of provisions that I would specifically highlight that we put in there that are really big for investment in this country. One is the full expensing, the restoration of the full expensing of R&D, research and development. The second one is the restoration of the 100% accelerated depreciation of CapEx. If you are building a company today or you're expanding a company, you're oftentimes doing significant amounts of R&D, developing a new product. The ability to fully expense that is huge for the people who are making the investments, as well as the workers who are doing the work on that R&D. The second thing that I would add is on the accelerated depreciation of CapEx. If you're building a new factory here, most of what's going to go inside that factory is subject to the CapEx provisions. And to be able to fully expense all of the CapEx, those are two huge things. Mm-hmm. The third thing that I would add that we added that is huge for manufacturing is we put a Made in America provision inside of our working families tax cut. And that is that if you build a new factory in this country for the next 4 years, you can depreciate 100% of the cost of that factory, including the shell, whereas normally it's a 39-year depreciation schedule. So we really have done a number of things to try to get investment going here in this country, to try to get our economy moving in this country, which is ultimately, it's good for companies, but it's also, even more importantly, for the constituents I serve, it's good for people who are being employed in these facilities.
Yeah, so the one big beautiful bill, obviously the president's signature accomplishment in his first couple of years in office. And those are kind of these provisions. When does the impact, how soon is it being felt? And what are you thinking about next, right? Is it another reconciliation package? Is it other things that, from your perch on the tax writing panel, you guys are already starting to think about?
Yeah, I think we're already seeing the effects of the bill. When I think about, look at our second quarter GDP report, which was a high 3 number. We're looking at another good number potentially coming out here in the next week or so on our third quarter. Some of the preliminary numbers that we've seen economically are very, very good because of the investment that's being made here in this country. Yet when companies saw that we were going down this route of restoring some of these provisions that are pro-growth, people started immediately making investments in this country. And that's what we expected to see. Mm-hmm. And the evidence is certainly bearing that out.
You're also a member of the Global Investment in American Jobs Caucus. Talk to us about what that caucus is, what activity you're doing in that area.
Yeah, what we want to see is investment come from all over the globe right here into the United States. We want to attract capital from around the globe. We also want to attract capital from outside of our district. And one of the things I think is really important is that in the United States of America, we maintain our qualitative and quantitative competitive edge in all areas, including in tax. And we really did a lot of work to make sure that we have a competitive tax environment. When you think about the overall size of the American economy, our economy is over a $30 trillion, north of $30 trillion now of GDP. And you look at how far ahead we are of second place, how far ahead we are of all of the rest of the countries. There's no country, economically speaking, that comes close to competing with the United States of America. And one of the things that I wake up every day thinking about is how do we make sure that we maintain that edge so that no one can catch us.
Right. I want to switch gears a little bit to talk about retirement security. It is a big topic for a lot of Americans. There's concern, a number of recent studies saying it's something that Americans think about, at least on a weekly basis. As I get older, it's certainly something I'm thinking a lot more about. And a lot of people worry they don't have enough money to retire. How does investment in the private sector connect to retirement security, especially when it comes to public pension funds and 401ks?
We've seen the administration recently go down this rulemaking path where 401ks will much sooner be able to more easily invest in private capital. Private capital and private companies are something that oftentimes before this has been accessible only to wealthy Americans. You have to be an accredited investor to have access to this. And we want to really go down this path of democratizing access to private capital, allow more Hoosiers to make their own investment decisions about where they should invest. Because at the end of the day, in the federal government, we should trust Hoosiers with their money more than we should trust us with their money. And so we want to open up access to that. The administration is doing some work in that because factory floor workers here in this district should be able to put their money where they believe it is best. And for them to have access to private capital, where oftentimes you get outsized returns compared with the rest of the market, I think that's a good thing. What you've also seen over the last 30 years or so in this country is your options for investing in publicly traded companies continue to be more and more limited. Today, you have less than half of the total public companies available for investment than what you had 30 years ago. And so as publicly traded companies, the number of the publicly traded companies continues to shrink, it's important, I think, for us to open up access to additional investment options for Hoosiers who want to save and retire.
Yeah, I mean, so we're kind of drilling down a little bit. The president, which we kind of alluded to, made a recent announcement to change some of the rules as it relates to 401ks and the ability to invest in private capital. Now it goes into a rulemaking, and there's kind of the process part of the phase behind the scenes. What are things you're focused on? What are things that you want to make sure that also protect, I'm sure, your constituents as well?
You know, part of the protection, I think, it will be done within this rulemaking authority that the president has. I mean, these will be things that will be professionally managed. People will be able to pick a target date for their retirement to make sure that that the money is invested appropriately. But at the same time, one of the things that I believe that Hoosiers will have is, again, the choice. If they want to invest in private capital, they'll have the opportunity to do so. If they say, no, that's not for me, hey, you know what, that's okay too. They don't have to.
Right.
And so they'll have the opportunity to still invest in stocks and bonds and mutual funds and ETFs and all the things that they do today with an additional option of going into private capital if they believe that that's best for them.
All right, we are quickly running out of time, but I want to project forward, right? 5 years from now, second district, private capital, what do you hope to see happen? What are some of the things you're most excited about?
Sure. I'd like to see continued growth here in this region. We want to see companies continue to make the decision to locate here, to grow here, to invest here, to hire workers here. Indiana's second district has a workforce that is second to none. I've had the opportunity many, many times over to spend so much time on the factory floors right here in this district, meeting with the workers, going station to station to say, tell me your story. Tell me about what you're doing here. And the pride that they take in what we make here in this district, it's really been incredible to see. So what I want to see is simply an expansion of that, see more companies make the decision to locate here, to grow here, to invest here. Because when you look at all the outside capital that's come in here, the secret about Indiana's second district is really gotten out across the country, and people are continuing to make the decision to move here, to locate here, to move their families here, and start a family here, grow a family here, and get a job here and stay here. So we want to see more of what we're already doing.
And I think one of the things that you were talking about backstage was really interesting is, like, you know, people are not only doing it once, but they're staying, right? I mean, and that kind of is helpful probably for the overall economy, I assume.
We are seeing so many people who maybe they start a company, they get close to retirement, they maybe sell their company, and then a few months later they're bored and they say, well, I want to start another company. What they don't do is you don't see them leave this community, go somewhere else and start another company, because the ecosystem for growth exists right here. We have all the ingredients right here in North Central Indiana to start a company, to grow a company, and to be successful. And so people who have maybe moved on from one company, when they decide to start another one, they do it right here in Indiana's second district. And we should be incredibly proud of that fact.
We are going to leave it there. Congressman, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me today.
All right.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, now I'd like to welcome Will Dunham, President and CEO of the American Investment Council, for a fireside chat. Will, thank you so much.
Well, Anna, good to see you.
All right, well, that's a hard act to follow, but...
You all are very well represented.
Let's get to it. First, set the stage for anyone here or on the live stream who might not be familiar with the American Investment Council. What is it that you do as a trade association in Washington, and what do you represent?
It's awesome. Thank you all for hosting us. It's great to be here in South Bend on a game day weekend where Notre Dame pulled it out against USC. Good to be here with you. The American Investment Council represents the private equity and private credit industries. And what we do, in large part, is tell the story of our industry in Washington to lawmakers. And we spend a lot of time on Capitol Hill talking to lawmakers. And one of the most important things we do in every single meeting is hand out a sheet of paper like the ones you have right in front of you right now that say what private equity and private credit is doing to invest in your state and district. And so right here in Indiana too, there are 58 private equity-backed companies. And Congressman Yakym alluded to several of them. Obviously, they're creating jobs. And a lot of people think of Wall Street when they think of private equity, and fair enough. But we encourage them, think of Main Street. Think of Main Streets like here in South Bend. 85% of private equity investment goes to small and medium-sized businesses. 85%. Now, those aren't the headlines you see in the Wall Street Journal, and that's why it's really important that we tell the story of our industry. 85% of those investments go to those small businesses with a median size of 73 employees. These are the factory floors that Congressman Yakym was talking about. And that's sort of the story we're telling to help people understand exactly where the investments are going, where the jobs are being created. We were just on Capitol Hill not too long ago with an ice cream company. Started out as a small business. We were handing out ice cream samples. We'll catch you next time,
I know.
Anna.
How did I miss this? My invite must have gotten lost in the mail.
This ice cream company started out as a food truck. You really can't start smaller than that. Two guys in the back of a food truck. And private equity capital came in, helped them grow. And look, the entrepreneur does the hard thing. And Anna's an entrepreneur too. You go from 0 to 1, right? You take an idea and you make it real. But to scale it up, that often takes capital. And so this ice cream company that we were taking around on Capitol Hill started as a food truck. They're now in 300 locations across the country. They're in grocery stores all over the United States, including right here. And it's an amazing success story. They've created a lot of jobs, and they've brought a lot of happiness with their ice cream, and that's great. And that was all possible because of that private capital and that entrepreneurial ecosystem that it creates. And one last thing on that point, we talk a lot about the capital that private equity and private credit provide. And that's really important to scale. But it's also partnership. Like if you think about what it takes to go from a food truck to 300 locations across the United States, that's going to take some marketing acumen. That's going to take some logistics and supply chain acumen. That's going to take some real estate analysis to figure out where do you put those scoop shops. That's the sort of partnership that private equity provides. It's not just capital, it's partnership as well. And so that's who we are at the American Investment Council. We are private equity, we are private credit, and we love telling that story.
So there's a lot of focus right now on jobs and the economy. Zoom out for us a bit. How have you seen private investment translate into these broader economic benefits when it comes to growing businesses and creating jobs here in Indiana, but maybe kind of more writ large, kind of across the country?
Yeah, zooming out, 10,000 jobs here in Indiana too, almost 300,000 private equity-backed jobs across Indiana, 13 million private equity-backed jobs across the United States. Now, those numbers tell a story, but I think if you drill down and look at where our members are investing, the story becomes even clearer. For example, manufacturing. The private equity industry has invested $1 trillion over the last decade. $1 trillion in U.S. manufacturing. Think of how many supply chains that brought home. Think of how many supply chains that kept here at home, both here in Indiana and across the country, just in the manufacturing space. And, another area that we've been seeing a lot of growth is AI. Right? We want to win the AI race with China. That's going to take private capital. Our members have invested in over 500 data centers over the course of the last 5 years, including the energy it takes to run those data centers. It's one thing to build a data center. It's another thing to build the energy along with that. And a lot of these projects you see that our members are investing in do both. And we think that's really important, like I said, to winning the AI race with China, and that's a national security issue. Congressman Yakym mentioned there's also national security investments right here in Indiana, too, that private equity has made across the country. We've made 150 national security investments over the course of the last 5 years. So that gives you a little flavor. Big picture, it's a lot of jobs, but it's in manufacturing, it's in data centers, win the AI race, it's in national security. So it's in these really critical sectors for our country.
So when it comes to Washington, where we both spend most of our time, where do you see opportunities for Congress on these issues that you care so much about?
So, as an industry, we're long on America. These are long-term investments. There's no short here. And these investments do well if the American economy does well. And I would argue, and I mentioned that you all are very well represented here, the American economy does well when we have a public policy environment that allows entrepreneurism to thrive. And something that Congressman Yakym mentioned was the big tax bill that was passed earlier this year. And it did two really critical things to take away some of the uncertainty that the private sector was facing. One, there was a $4.5 trillion tax cliff that was scheduled in law to go into effect at the end of this year. That's a massive tax cliff. And Congressman Yakym and his colleagues get too little credit for avoiding that, right? It seems inevitable. Of course they're going to avoid a $4.5 trillion tax hike. Well, we're in the middle of a government shutdown, right? Washington is not all function. There's a little dysfunction too. And I think we ought to celebrate it when there's function. And we saw that with the tax bill. They avoided a $4.5 trillion tax hike. And then they did something, and Congressman Yakym alluded to this, and I think it's really, really important, and probably the most important part of the bill. They made a lot of those pro-growth policies permanent. And what does that mean for an entrepreneur? Well, for an entrepreneur, that means they can invest knowing the rules of the road. And I think that's really, really important. And that's kind of the lens through which we at the American Investment Council look at public policy. Does it provide certainty? Does it provide predictability so that our members can make investments? And these are not short-term holds. These are 4, 7, 10-year holds of a company. You really need to know the rules of the road if you're going to make a long-term commitment like that in a company. And the tax bill this year really allowed our members to do that. And then on the regulatory side, we've seen the Trump administration really commit to predictability on that piece of the equation as well. And that's very, very important. Just as important as the legislative and tax side, having a regulatory environment that is predictable and certain provides an opportunity for our members to invest and grow these businesses. Just one example of that, our members are investing in the real economy. They're tangible assets. And a lot of that investment involves permitting. And that's something that Congress has struggled with to enact permitting reform. It takes way too long in the United States from start to finish to permit a major facility. But the Trump administration has said, all right, well, in the meantime, here's what we're going to do. And they stood up something called the Permitting Council. And the Permitting Council is made up of experts from all over the government. They come from all these agencies that do the permitting. It's a smorgasbord of agencies, over a dozen, that do the permitting process for a major project. They've brought them in-house, and they actually work as a SWAT team to move projects through the federal government to increase the efficiency of that process and to lower the time by as much as 25% from start to finish. It's just an example of the kind of thing that the administration is doing to provide regulatory certainty while Congress works to provide sort of long-term permitting reform, and we hope that's in the offing as we're working on these major projects.
All right, well, you heard Congressman Yakym's support of President Trump's recent executive order when it comes to expanding access to private investment options for our everyday savers in their 401ks. Can you talk about the significance of that and what impact you think it could have for everyday Americans?
Sure. It's a really great project, and we're excited to be part of it. Retirement security is not new to the private equity industry. We've been part of the retirement ecosystem for decades, both for universities and public pensions. Private credit is increasingly important in that space as well. So this is not a new space for us. In fact, if you passed a teacher or a firefighter or a policeman on the way here, odds are their pension is secured by investments in private equity and private credit. It's been the best performing asset class over the long haul for those public pensioners, for those defined benefit pensions. The problem is, and the congressman alluded to this, 401k holders cannot currently invest in private equity and private credit. That's not an option to them today. So it's this great performing asset class for universities and public pensions and endowments, but it's not available to the worker with the 401k, and tens of millions of Americans are just shut out of this investment opportunity. Fortunately, the Trump administration is taking steps to fix that. The Department of Labor is tip of the spear on that, and they are going through the process. And if you fast forward through that process, they're going to be successful. Fast forward through that process, what does it mean for an individual? We'll just walk you through it. It's pretty straightforward. Imagine a 25-year-old here in South Bend. They have a 401k. They log into their 401k. Right now, they can pick a target date fund. When do you want to retire? 2055, if you're 25 years old, maybe you're gonna have a 30-year career. Okay, that's your target. And the older you get, the more you think about that. But a 25-year-old, they have a long time. So they pick the target date fund. This is a professionally managed fund. By the way, almost 70% of Americans have a target date fund. This is the most popular way to invest in a 401k. And so they pick their target date fund. Right now, that's a mix of stocks and bonds. And that mix changes over time. It's professionally managed, and it changes over time as the individual ages. You want less risk and more stable returns. So you have probably less equity and more bonds. But as we mentioned, they don't have access to private investment right now. Fast forward to when they will be able to do that, that asset manager will pick the appropriate mix. It will be a prudent balance of stocks and bonds for sure, but also private equity and private credit. And I can't emphasize enough, that mix changes over time, as you get older. And that's what's so great about these target date funds. And that's really the structure you're going to be able to see. And that option, the democratizing of 401ks. And this shouldn't be something that's only for the wealthy. It should be something that, the worker here in Indiana too can log into their 401k account and choose if they'd like, and get the help of a professional manager. And pick that mix that's right for them based on sort of what they want to see in terms of their risk and return.
All right, well, we are almost out of time, but before I let you go, what's the one thing you want those in the audience and on the live stream watching to take away from this conversation?
I think the biggest thing is that we are long on the U.S. economy. You heard a great conversation earlier with Anna and Congressman Yakym about the entrepreneurial ecosystem we see here in Indiana too. And we see that all over the country, and we love being a part of it. We're so proud to be a part of it. And for that serial entrepreneur who builds a business, sells it, takes the proceeds and builds another business, sells it, repeat, repeat, repeat. That would not be possible without private capital, because that entrepreneur, if they can't pass it on to their kids or sell it to their employees, will be at that business and get to the end of their working career and say, what do I do with what I've built? Fortunately, private equity and private credit make it possible for those entrepreneurs to sell those businesses, grow those businesses, and then in many cases repeat that process. So that entrepreneurial ecosystem is, I think, part of what makes the American economy dynamic. It's what makes us really the envy of the world, and we are so proud to be part of that.
All right, well, we are going to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me for a Fireside Chat. A big thank you to AIC for partnering with us, and to Congressman Yakym for welcoming us to the 2nd District. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day and stay safe, everybody.
Thanks a lot.